My brother called me 43 times the night he burned his business down. Not literally, but close enough. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Portland, eating leftover pod D straight from the container when my phone started going off. The first call I ignored. The second, I figured it was a pocket dial. By the fifth, I set down my fork. I didn't answer. I knew that ringtone too well. My brother only called in clusters like that when he needed something, and whatever he needed was always something I didn't have or shouldn't give. Let me back up. My brother is 4 years older than me. He's the kind of person who walks into a room and makes everyone feel like the party just started. He's charming in that effortless way that some people are born with, the kind of charm that makes you forget he once borrowed $200 from you and never mentioned it again. Growing up, he was my parents' golden child, not because he was smarter or kinder, but because he was louder about his ambitions. He talked about his plans the way other people talk about things they've already done. My parents loved that about him. I think they saw themselves in him, the version of themselves they always meant to become. I was the quiet one, the practical one, the one who made a spreadsheet before making a decision. I graduated with an accounting degree from a state school, passed my CPA exam on the first try, and got a job with a mid-size firm in Portland that I genuinely liked. I bought a small condo at 28. I drove a 7-year-old Civic. I had a savings account that I contributed to every single month without exception because I had watched my parents scramble their entire lives, and I swore I would never do the same. My brother, meanwhile, had big plans. First it was a food truck, then a craft brewery, then a meal prep delivery service. Each one started with a fire in his eyes and ended with a quiet conversation where my parents asked me, gently, if I could help cover a few things while he got back on his feet. I always said yes. I said yes to $1,200 after the food truck. I said yes to $2,200 after the brewery equipment got repossessed. I told myself it was a loan. I kept a note in my phone tracking what they owed me. At some point, I stopped opening that note because the number made my chest hurt. The meal prep business, though, he actually got that one off the ground. His name was on a lease in the Pearl District, a commercial kitchen space that cost more per month than my mortgage. He had 3 employees. He had a website that looked professional. He posted reels of himself cooking, and they got decent numbers. My parents started talking about him at every family dinner like he was about to be featured in Forbes. My mother used the phrase, "This time it's real," so many times it started to feel like a prayer. I visited the kitchen once, in October. I looked at the equipment, the lease terms, the basic numbers he'd written on a whiteboard. I told him gently that his margins were thin and his rent was eating him alive. He laughed and told me I always saw the glass half empty. 2 months later, in December, he called me 43 times in one night. I found out later he'd been using my name, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The night of the calls, I was tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I'd closed a hard audit that week, the kind that leaves you staring at numbers behind your eyelids when you close your eyes. I had plans to take a bath, watch something mindless, be in bed by 10. My phone started buzzing at 9:47. I watched it go to voicemail, then buzz again, and again. At call 11, I picked up. My mother's voice came through before I even said hello. "He needs you," she said, just that. I knew immediately what kind of call this was going to be. I'd been on this call before. Different year, different dollar amount, same call. "What happened?" I asked. She started talking fast, words tumbling over each other. The kitchen lease, the suppliers, a debt that had gotten bigger than any of us knew. His business account was frozen. He owed $31,000 to a commercial equipment company that was threatening to sue. The landlord had already sent a default notice. 2 of his 3 employees hadn't been paid in 6 weeks. "How long has this been building?" I asked. A pause. "A while." "How long is a while, Mum?" She didn't answer that directly. She started talking about how hard he'd been working, how close he'd been to turning it around, how one bad contract had started a chain reaction. She said he was devastated. She said Dad was losing sleep. I said, "Put him on." My brother's voice was different from how he usually sounded. The brightness was gone. He sounded small in a way I hadn't heard since we were kids, and he broke a window with a baseball and had to tell our father. "I'm in trouble," he said. "I can hear that. I need $31,000 by Friday or they file. If they file, it tanks everything." The lease, the accounts, all of it. I took a breath. $31,000. I had it. That was the thing. I had it sitting in a high-yield savings account because I had spent the last 6 years being the person nobody in my family understood. I drove the old Civic for a reason. That's a lot of money, I said. I know it is. I wouldn't ask if I had any other option. What happened to the business account? Overdrawn. I had a client cancel a big order and I'd already ordered the inventory. Do you have any assets I could hold as collateral? Equipment? Anything. He went quiet for a second. The equipment has a lien on it already. From who? Another pause, longer this time, from a loan I took out in June. Who's the lender? He said a name I didn't recognize. A private lending company. High interest, short term. I wrote it down on the notepad I keep by my kitchen table. How much was the loan? $14,000. I did the math quietly. $14,000 in June, $31,000 owed now, 6 months later. The interest rate on something like that would have been obscene. What's the interest rate? 28%. There it was. Okay, I said, I need to think. I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up before he could argue. I sat at the table for a long time. I looked at the notepad. I looked at the name of the lender. And then I did what I always did when something felt off. I opened my laptop and started pulling threads. The private lending company had a website that looked functional but thin. No physical address listed, just a form. I searched the name against Oregon's licensed lender registry, nothing. I searched it against the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation, nothing. I searched it paired with the word complaint. 3 forum posts came up, all from different states, all describing the same pattern: predatory short-term loans issued to small business owners, often arranged by a third party, often targeting people who didn't read the fine print about personal guarantees. Personal guarantees. I sat up straighter. I went back to my phone and called my brother back. The loan in June, I said when he answered. Did you sign a personal guarantee? A beat of silence. I don't know. Maybe. There was a lot of paperwork. Did anyone else's name appear on any of that paperwork? A longer silence. He said it would help the approval, my brother said, and his voice had dropped to almost nothing. Who said that? The guy who arranged it. He said if there was a co-applicant with good credit, the rate would be lower. He asked if I had a family member who would... He stopped. The room felt very still. What name did you use? I asked. Nothing. Whose name is on that loan document? I was going to tell you, he said. I was going to pay it off before you ever had to. Say my name. Say whose name is on that document. Yours, he whispered. He said I just needed to list you as a co-applicant. I didn't think it would matter because I was going to pay it back before. I hung up. I opened my credit monitoring app. I hadn't checked it in about 3 weeks. I almost never had reason to. The alert was already there, sitting in my notifications like it had been waiting patiently for me to look. New account, June 14th. Creditor, a name that matched exactly what my brother had told me. Type, personal business loan. Balance, $14,000 original. Current, $17,240 with accrued interest and fees. Listed borrower, my brother. Cosigner and personal guarantee, my name, my legal name, my social security number, my address, my credit score used to unlock a loan I had never seen, never agreed to, never signed, except there was a signature. I requested the document through the portal. It took 4 minutes to load. I zoomed in on the signature line, my name, in handwriting that wasn't mine. The loops were too wide. The way the capital letter was formed was wrong. I have a very particular way of writing my name, a habit from years of signing audit documents, and whoever had done this had made a decent approximation, but it wasn't me. It wasn't even close to me if you knew what to look for. I knew what to look for. I called my mother back. She answered on the first ring. I could hear my father in the background, and my brother, and the particular quality of silence that a room full of people waiting for news makes. How long have you known? I asked. Known what? Sweetheart. Don't. A pause. He told us a few weeks ago, she said, her voice going smaller. We told him he had to fix it before you found out. We didn't want you to worry. You didn't want me to worry, I repeated. You work so hard. You've always been so responsible. We just thought, you thought what? That I'd never check my own credit? We thought he would fix it. Her voice broke a little. He promised he would fix it. I looked at the loan document still open on my screen. I looked at the signature that wasn't mine. I thought about June 14th, which I could account for completely because I had been in Seattle for a client engagement that week and I had the hotel receipts and the mileage logs and the meeting notes to prove it. I was in Seattle on June 14th. Someone had signed my name to a document in Portland. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't a shortcut. That was fraud. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen now, I said. Maddie. My name is not Maddie, and you're going to listen to me. My mother went quiet. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling my bank and flagging this account as fraudulent. I'm going to submit a dispute with documentation, including my travel records proving I was not in this state when that signature was obtained. I'm going to report the forged signature to the Oregon Department of Justice. And I am going to contact an attorney about my options regarding the personal guarantee, because a personal guarantee signed by someone other than the person named is not enforceable, and whoever arranged that loan knows it. You're going to get him arrested, she said. I'm going to protect myself. He's your brother. Her voice rose. He made a mistake. He was desperate. You have the money. You've always had the money, and you sit on it like it's more important than family. What does it cost you? What does $31,000 actually cost you when he could lose everything? I thought about what it had cost me. 6 years of eating lunch at my desk. 6 years of not taking the vacations I'd earned. 6 years of the old Civic and the small condo and the savings account that I built, dollar by careful dollar, because I had watched what happened when you didn't. It cost me $31,000, I said, which I didn't agree to spend. Family helps family. Family doesn't forge family. She started to say something else, but I was done. I love you, I said, and I'm not doing this. I hung up. I sat at the table until almost midnight. I won't pretend I felt nothing. I felt everything, all at once, in a nauseating wave. I felt a specific grief of realizing that the people who are supposed to love you have been doing math behind your back, calculating what they could extract from you without you noticing. I felt the shame they were counting on, because it was there, right on schedule. The voice that said, "You're tearing the family apart." The voice that said he made a mistake. People make mistakes. The voice that said you could fix this and you're choosing not to. I let those voices run for a while. Then I closed the loan document, opened a new tab, and started building my case. I documented everything that night. I screenshotted the account. I pulled my travel records for June. I found the hotel folio from Seattle and the calendar invites from that week with the client's name and address. I wrote a timeline. I looked up Oregon's identity theft statutes. I found the contact information for the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation and the FTC's Identity Theft Reporting Portal. I saved everything into a single folder on my desktop labeled with the date and nothing else. By the time I got into bed, it was past 1 in the morning. My phone had received 11 more texts, split between my mother, my father, and a cousin I barely spoke to who had apparently been recruited to tell me I was being heartless. I read none of them past the first line. I turned off my phone, set it face down on my nightstand, and lay in the dark listening to the heater click on and off. I thought about my brother's voice on the phone. That small, broken quality. I thought about the fact that I had genuinely hoped, in October standing in that commercial kitchen, that he had finally found his thing. I thought about how much it cost me to hope that, and how familiar the bill always was. I slept about 4 hours. At 7 the next morning, I called my bank's fraud department. The representative who answered had a calm, professional voice that I immediately found stabilizing. I explained the situation. She walked me through the dispute process, flagged the account, and opened a fraud investigation. She told me that because a cosigner dispute involves a forged signature, the timeline for resolution would likely be longer than a standard transaction dispute, but that my travel documentation would be significant. "Is there anything else on your report I should know about?" she asked. "Let me check." I opened the full report. There was one more item I hadn't noticed the night before, a second inquiry from the same lender, dated 3 days after the first, that appeared to have been declined. Whoever had tried to take out a second loan in my name had been turned down, probably because the first loan had already shifted my utilization. I took a screenshot of that too. I locked my credit at all 3 bureaus before I got off the phone. I called an attorney at 9. I had worked with an estate planning attorney once, and she referred me to a colleague who handled financial fraud. I had an appointment by the end of the day. I spent my lunch hour organizing my documentation folder into a format that was easy to present. My parents called twice before noon. I let both go to voicemail. My father's message was quiet and tired. He said he wasn't defending what happened. He said he hoped I would think about it before doing anything that couldn't be undone. He sounded genuinely sad, which was harder to hear than anger would have been. My brother texted at 10:43, 2 sentences. I know I had no right. I'm sorry. I read it 3 times. Then I put the phone back down. Saying sorry doesn't unforge a signature. Saying sorry doesn't remove your name from a predatory loan you never agreed to. Saying sorry doesn't give back the 6 years of discipline that built the savings account someone else decided to leverage without asking. I knew the apology was real, probably. I knew he was genuinely ashamed. It didn't change the material facts of what had been done, and I was someone who worked with material facts for a living. The attorney meeting was at 4 in the afternoon over video. She reviewed the documents I'd sent, asked sharp questions, and told me what I already suspected. The personal guarantee, obtained with a forged signature, was likely unenforceable, and my travel records created a credible alibi for the date in question. She said pursuing it as identity theft was appropriate and that I had a strong case for disputing the debt entirely. She also said gently that family fraud cases were complicated and asked whether I wanted to pursue criminal charges against my brother specifically. I thought about it for longer than I expected. Not right now, I said. I want to focus on getting my name off this. She nodded like she'd heard that answer before. That's reasonable. We can reserve the right to reconsider. After I hung up, I sat with the quiet in my apartment for a while. The late afternoon light was coming through the blinds in long bars across the floor, the kind of light that makes ordinary rooms look like they mean something. I thought about the version of this evening I'd planned 2 days ago. The bath. The mindless TV. Bed by 10. I thought about June 14th. When someone had sat across from a loan officer or a document or a notary and written my name in handwriting that wasn't quite right and let it go through anyway. I thought about my parents who had known for weeks and decided the best plan was to hope it got resolved before I noticed. Who had looked at me my whole life as the responsible one, the stable one, and concluded that stability meant I could absorb whatever was extracted from me. I thought about all the times I had said yes, the 1,200. The 2,200, the countless smaller amounts that didn't make it into the note on my phone because they were too small to bother tracking, and the cumulative weight of all of them. I made one more call that evening. My parents answered together, which meant they were sitting side by side, which meant they'd been waiting. I want you to know what I've done, I said. Not to scare you, just because you deserve to know. I told them about the bank, the fraud report, the credit freeze, the attorney. My mother started to cry. Not the manipulative kind of crying, the actual kind, the kind that sounds like something breaking open. My father was very quiet. Are you pressing charges against him? Dad asked. Not at this moment. I'm focusing on protecting myself. He'll lose the business either way, my mother said through tears. I know. You could still fix this. I know. Then why? Because this time it wasn't a bad decision that cost his own money, I said. This time it was my name, my credit. My signature copied by someone else on a document I never saw. And if I absorb this the way I've absorbed everything else, then I'm telling everyone in this family that there's no line, that I don't have one, and I can't live the rest of my life being someone who doesn't have a line. Neither of them said anything for a moment. I need some space, I said, from all of it. I'm not saying forever. I'm saying I need time. I said I loved them. I meant it. Then I hung up. I didn't block anyone. I thought about it and decided that blocking was a door I wanted to leave cracked, at least for now, at least for my own sake. What I did was set every family contact to do not disturb. Their messages would come through. I would see them when I was ready. That felt like the right size of distance. I made dinner, real dinner, not leftovers, the kind where you chop things and wait for a pan to heat up and the process of it makes you feel like a person. I ate at the table. Outside, Portland was doing what Portland does in December, everything gray and wet and quietly lit, and I watched it through the window while I ate. 3 months later, the fraud dispute was resolved in my favor. The loan was removed from my credit entirely. My score recovered fully within 2 more months. The attorney's fees cost me $1,700, which I loved as the most useful $1,700 I'd ever spent. My brother lost the kitchen. The lease defaulted. The equipment lien got called. He moved back in with my parents in February, which I found out from a text my cousin sent that I wasn't sure was meant for me. He texted me 4 more times over those months. Nothing demanding, nothing that sounded like a setup. Just short messages. One said he was in therapy. One said he understood if he never heard from me again. One said he was sorry, again in more words than the first time. The fourth one, sent on a Saturday morning in March, said, "I keep thinking about how you always tried to tell me. About the margins and the rent and all of it. I should have listened. I'm really sorry." I read that one 3 times too. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit for 2 days, which felt like the honest amount of time it needed. Then I wrote back 4 words, "I hear you. Thanks." Not because everything was fine. Not because the loan and the signature and the nights my family spent hoping I wouldn't notice had somehow been erased by good intentions and a therapy appointment. But because I was not trying to end something permanently. I was trying to establish for the first time in my adult life what it would cost to be in relationship with me. And that cost was honesty, accountability, the basic acknowledgement that I was a person, not a resource. That felt like a beginning worth making. I still drive the same Civic. The savings account is where I left it, more or less. I went to Seattle in April for something that had nothing to do with work, just because I wanted to, and I expensed exactly nothing, and I felt fine about it. My mother called me on my birthday in May. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing in particular. The weather, a book she'd read, a neighbor who'd finally sold his house after 3 years. She didn't ask for anything. At the end, she said, "I love you," in a voice that sounded like she meant just that and nothing else. I said it back. It was a small thing, but it was the first one in a long time that felt clean. I've thought a lot about the night I found my name on that loan document. Not the anger of it, though the anger was real. I mean the moment right before the anger. The 2 or 3 seconds where I just sat there looking at a signature that was supposed to be mine and wasn't, and felt something I can only describe as the floor dropping out from under a room I thought I'd built solid. That's the thing about trust inside a family. You don't audit it. You don't run checks on the people who taught you how to ride a bike or sat with you when you were sick. You extend it automatically, the way you breathe without deciding to. And when someone uses that automatic trust against you, the betrayal isn't just personal. It's structural. It shakes something foundational. What I kept coming back to in the weeks after everything happened was cause and effect, not in a punishing way, not pointing fingers at fate or circumstance. Just the plain, honest logic of it. My brother had made choices, one after another over years, and each choice had a consequence, and the consequences accumulated until they became a crisis. The food truck, the brewery, the bad loan at 28% interest. The decision, at some point, to write a name on a document that wasn't his to write. None of that happened in a vacuum. None of it was random. There was a through line, and the through line was a pattern of choosing the shortcut, the workaround, the hand extended towards someone else's stability instead of building his own. And I had my own through line. 6 years of quiet decisions. Brown bagging lunch. Driving the old car. Saying no to things I could technically afford because I was thinking about what the future actually costs. I didn't make those choices because I had some special discipline gene. I made them because I had seen up close what happens when you don't. And when the crisis came, when my name showed up on a fraudulent document at 11 at night, the thing that saved me wasn't luck or anger. It was the paper trail I'd been building for years without knowing I'd ever need it. The receipts. The travel records, the clean credit history, the documentation. Intelligence in the form of preparation. That's the part I want to sit with. Being smart isn't just about knowing things. It's about building the kind of life where the truth can defend you, where the facts are on your side because you've lived carefully and honestly enough that the facts reflect who you actually are. The hardest part wasn't the fraud report or the attorney fees or even the months of uncertainty while the dispute resolved. The hardest part was choosing not to disappear into bitterness about it. My brother did something wrong. My parents made choices I wouldn't make. But I was not going to let their actions become the thing that defined how I moved through the world going forward. Holding a permanent grudge would have cost me more than the loan ever could. What I chose instead was a line, a clear, documented, quietly enforced line. That's not coldness. That's what it looks like when someone finally respects themselves enough to say, "This is where I end and you begin." The last text my brother sent me said he was in therapy and that he was sorry. I believed him. Believing him didn't mean everything was repaired. It meant I could see him as a person who had made serious mistakes rather than a monster, and that distinction mattered to me, for my own sake. Carrying hatred is its own kind of debt, and I had worked too hard for too long to carry any more of those. What the whole experience taught me is that integrity is not a performance, it's a practice. It's the small, honest choices you make when nobody is watching, compounding over time into something that can hold you up when things get hard. My brother learned that the hard way. I learned that you can love someone and still refuse to be their safety net when they've used your name without your permission. Both of those things can be true at the same time. That's enough for me.